Welcome, Degens, far and wide, to another edition of the Degen Docs. That is right, folks. And we are breaking down our last division, division number 8, saving one of the best for last, the AFC North. We are talking free agency breakdowns. We're talking expert injury analysis. We are talking fantasy takeaways. And, of course, that sweet, sweet action, your best bets. So, crack a beer. Have a cold one. Cheers. We invite you to talk some ball with us, have some fun. We are the Degen Docs. Oh, it's just so good when it hits your lips. All right. The AFC North edition of the Degen Docs on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 325 times your entry with their Pick 8. Sign up with promo code SGPNDOC. All caps, all one word, to claim your special pick, plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPNDOC. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm is loaded up with a ton of picks for the British Open. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. They've got golf. They've got WNBA. They got everything to keep you excited during these dog days of summer as we await football. I am the OG Degen Docs, Sebastian Fearon, joined by my co-host, my brother in degeneracy, Mr. Derek Bennett, a.k.a. Professor Locks. How we doing, brother?
Here we go. It is AFC North day. I am absolutely jacked. Here we go.
We've been waiting for this one for a while. So, yes, those that do not know, Derek is a very big Steelers fan. So I will do my best to keep him in check here, make sure we don't get too much biased. But as we all saw in my NFC East episode, we love some passion around here. And I do have, as you see, there's a terrible towel behind me. My wife is also a Steelers fan. So we may be a little bit pro Pittsburgh, where we went to school, actually, where we met. So,
that's right.
It's going to be a very fun episode. This division is a tough division, right? We talk about, I think it has to be up there as the hardest division in football. Everyone's win total, is above 8 games. I think you can really make a case for any of these teams. But before we get all into that, look, folks, I know right now we're recording this on Saturday, July 20th. It should be dropping next Wednesday, so only a couple days out. But being healthcare professionals, something that's very important when you have a guy with an injury or a patient or whatever it is there's some type of ramp-up period. There's some type of time where we want to make sure this person, you don't just throw them out to the wolves. And that's what we need to be doing right now, folks. That is why I'm switching it up from the whiskey to the beer, diversifying. We need to have a ramp-up protocol to make sure that we are ready for tailgate season. What is your expert opinion there? What are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more, to be honest with you. I mean, and not to say that I've ever been in this situation before, but if you haven't had a beverage in a while, by the time you indulge and have 2, 3, 6, 8, whatever it's going to be, depending on game time, if we jump right into the deep end, we may be asking for some trouble later on that evening or the next day. But if we slowly build into this, we kind of build up that tolerance or whatever you want to call it. And, we just kind of cruise right into week one very nicely, just as we've been talking about with some of these injuries.
Sounds good to me. Listen, guys. Hey, folks, this is a Degen Docs prescription, all right? Right now, we are 34 days out from college football. We're only 47 days out from the NFL. The season, football is right around the corner. You need to make sure if you're going to be tailgating this season, you got to be putting in the reps right now. This is where the wins and losses are found out in the offseason. Make sure you get up, you start your ramp-up protocol, and you have a beer today, all right? That's what we say. Just start getting ready to start tailgating, having some fun. Obviously, listen, we're so jacked up for football.
And with that, it doesn't just have to be, a couple brewskis in the afternoon or evening or on the weekend. But, fire up the grill. We're still talking summertime, throw some burgers, some brats, some dogs, some wings, whatever on the grill. Enjoy yourself, especially on a nice sunny weekend that I'm having here in Ohio currently. So,
yeah, I mean, hey, look, you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. All right, folks,
right.
Enough of that degeneracy. Obviously, there are plenty of ways to be a degen, so it's not just through, don't think we're just saying you got to drink to be a degen. You can join us here if you love football and you love talking football. That is more than enough to join the Degen Docs fam. We're going to kick this off. We're going to talk about what you guys actually came here for, and that is the AFC North preview. We are starting with none other than the 4th place Cincinnati Bengals, something that Bengals fans were used to, and then they had this guy, Joe Burrow, come into town, and it was something they were not used to. But still, just to show you how good this division is, 4th place with a winning record. You do not see that much at all. So
absolutely crazy. Like, when I can't remember when they finally cut Burrow for the rest of the season, or not cut, but like called him out for the rest of the season. But Jake Browning stepped in and was an absolute stud for the first few weeks. Eventually the NFL caught up with him. But like, to finish 9-8 and not have your MVP candidate quarterback on the sidelines for probably the last 6 or 8 weeks, like, it's still a solid season.
Yeah, no, very, very impressive. We're going to talk about Mr. Joe Burrow here in a little bit, but as we always do, let's start with the losses and additions. Let's see how this team is making up as we head into the 2024 season. We're going to start with the losses. Joe Mixon now in Houston. Tyler Boyd now in Tennessee. Herb Smith somewhere, no idea. DJ Reader, I think Reader is on the Lions now, right?
He's in Detroit.
And then Jacoby Awuzie is Tennessee. Yep, Tennessee with Tyler Boyd. Yeah, they got both Snead and Awuzie there when we were talking about those Titans. And then who's adding on? So, some decent losses. I'd probably say Mixon and Awuzie are probably the biggest. Reader's a good player, maybe him too. But guys adding on, Zach Moss coming from Indianapolis, Gesicki coming from New England. You got Trent Brown as offensive tackle, Sheldon Rankin, Amaris Mims, other offensive tackle from University of Georgia there. What are your first thoughts? What are your initial takeaways with what they did in free agency?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for the Bengals. I mean, they're basically running it back with a couple of additions. Obviously you lose Mixon to Houston, but you bring in a pretty serviceable running back in Zach Moss. He just hasn't had the opportunity to really show what he can do over a long period of games. But, I think the biggest addition for them is probably Trent Brown to, again, solidify that offensive line, because Joe Burrow is constantly running for his life, it seems like, except for their Super Bowl appearance year. You bring in
that year.
Yeah, that's
Aaron
true.
Donald coming through on that 4th down play.
There's a little bit of a difference with Aaron Donald. It doesn't matter who you throw out there. He's gonna find a way. Point. But yeah, Trent Brown, Amarius Mims coming in from Georgia. We'll see who ends up being that right tackle for them. But for all intents and purposes, like, you bring back probably the best wide receiver duo in the league. There was a little bit of not necessarily a debate, but like Higgins was kind of throwing some things up in the air there for a little while, but that seemed to calm back down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's on the franchise tag. He wanted a long-term deal. I do think he's going to be gone soon, but I do. Yeah, other than maybe Philly with Brown and Devonta Smith, but I would take the Bengals over them. I think this is the best wide receiver duo in the league. Maybe Waddle and Tyreek, but I'm not. Yeah. I think that I think Tyreek is better than Jamar Chase by a little bit, but I do think T. Higgins is significantly better than Jalen Waddle. But still, definitely a great tandem. Let's talk about some of these injuries. Nice thing at AFC North, not too many teams so banged up. There are two big players though. Obviously, Joe Burrow. I think most people are tracking. He had this wrist ligament tear surgery. He got injured November 16th. He's got about 9.5 months from his injury to week 1. Expected recovery timelines around that 5 to 6, 7 month range. So from that standpoint, he should be good. Now, there was a lot of talk about, is his wrist ever going to be the same? There was a lot of kind of fear mongering going on. A lot of people that have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, kind of throwing things out there. So what is your read? What is your takeaway on Joe Burrow? Is this something career altering, or is this, just as simple as fixing a ligament in the wrist?
No, I would put my money on Joe Burrow 7 days out of the week, twice on Sunday. I mean, the dude's a stud. I have followed Joe Burrow since he was in high school, being a Southeastern Ohio guy myself. Like he's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL. And like outside of the Steelers, like he is one of those dudes that unless the Bengals are playing the Steelers, I'll still root for Joe Burrow. Like he's just a stud, but I don't think it's going to necessarily alter what he does as a quarterback. Like the weapons that he has, the talent that he has, like we'll see. But at the end of the day, like for the most part, he's had a good extra 2-3 months to continue rehab and get that wrist back in shape and ready to roll. So I'm not too concerned.
I'm lockstep with you. I think there was a lot of, it's the offseason. People like to make headlines. They like to get engagement. They like to spew bullshit. Right. I don't think this is something career altering. I do think it's something serious, and it was obviously season ending, and he's kind of had the recovery, and he's going to have days where he's getting back into throwing. So he's going to have rest days, and those are going to be prescribed in. But I don't have a ton of concern. I want him to be able to get the reps, because some of the things we talk about is this Bengals team is notorious for their slow starts. Yep. So you want them to kind of figure that out, right? But I was a little worried, man. We might have some Yinzers listen to this. I thought you were going to talk yourself in a hole talking about nicely about Joe Burrow. But I do understand he's a good character, man.
Yeah, I think I first saw Joe actually play like 20 minutes from home when he was, I think he was a senior in high school going for a state championship. So he was pretty good even back then, believe it or not.
Yeah, that the guy who I always say that UCF hit. I remember watching that very distinctly when he threw a pick six, and that defensive tackle absolutely obliterated him for no reason.
Yeah.
So we can thank UCF and those shitbags down in Orlando, Florida, that for Joe Burrow. I say that lovingly as a Gators fan, and who has someone who has family who went to that school. Still hate him. All right, Sam Hubbard, the other guy on the Bengals who come back from a big injury, defensive end. Him and Trey Hendrickson been there for a few years, wrecking havoc. I think two guys who are both underrated. He had some ankle instability throughout the year. He had a deltoid ligament reconstruction and a tightrope surgery. So his ankle was pretty fucked up on both sides, right?
Yep.
Something that takes a decent amount of time, 4 to 6 months to come back from, dealing with both, especially the deltoid ligaments. They're stronger. They're harder to break. So if you do kind of injure them, there was a lot of damage done. So he's got about 7 months and from injury time from really his offseason surgery to week 1. What are your thoughts there? He did fight through this injury during the season.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned. I mean, like you were saying, that deltoid ligament is always a little bit more concerning because it's so stable. It's so strong on the inside part of that ankle that like we just don't see those kind of injuries nearly as often as those outside ankle injuries or those high ankle sprains that are usually synonymous with those tightrope procedures. But with the timeline that he has, the position that he's playing, I'm not too terribly concerned. Like if this was a DB, if this was a wide receiver or running back that's doing a lot more open field cutting on those ankles, maybe a little bit, but at the end of the day, I'm probably not even terribly concerned based on the timeline that they have to get back. So
I agree. I think both guys, more likely than not, they're going to be good to go by week 1. And really, you should see them ramping up in training camp. Training camp is here. Training camp is here. So that's exciting. Kicked off really this week. So definitely make sure you're following in with us. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on all the pages. We're on Instagram. We'll kind of throw that stuff up at the end. But we will be updating. I've started putting out a daily news thing and kind of breaking stuff down. So definitely make sure you stay up to date. We're going to head over to fantasy land now, and that is fantasy football. We're going to head over and see some takeaways for this team as we do with every team. So let's talk about – I want to talk about 3 guys here that, I don't think we need to talk about Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow. I think we understand they're obviously, you're going to pay a premium for them. I think those guys are all worth their price tag. But some kind of sleeper guys, I think one I want to start off with is Zach Moss at RB25. Yeah. I just think he's a guy who has shown with the opportunity, he's produced, right? I think that there's a lot. You got some people talking about Chase Brown. A lot of people love the rookies and the young guys and the unknowns. They love just thinking like, because I saw what they did in college, I think that, they're really going to be the next guy. They're going to be the next thing. I think Zach Moss, he showed some pretty good, tough determination, both in college and the NFL. He was a stud for the Colts before they got Jonathan Taylor back. I think he's just a guy who, given the opportunity, I'm not really so afraid of Chase Brown. I think Chase Brown is a nice change of pace guy. I think Zach Moss is going to be the every down back for this team. So in that reason, I see him more as an RB, 15. I think he's going way too late. What are your opinions there on Moss?
Yeah, I would probably say he's going a little bit lower than what I would expect. Like you said, he is an RB1. He is their dude. I don't expect them. I know the Bengals do really like Chase Brown, but he just didn't show a ton, at least to me, last season. Looking at the Bengals last year, Joe Mixon was a 1,000-yard runner. But with that being said, like, after Burrow went out, there seemed to be a slight change back to the running game. Like, Joe Burrow, when he got injured, he had the most attempts per game across the NFL. Like, it was pass happy every single week for the Bengals when Joe Burrow was the starting quarterback. So that's the one concern that I have.
That's a good point.
With Zach Moss coming in. I think with assuming healthy Joe Burrow, like, are they going to throw it 45, 50 times a game? Like, how much production is Zach Moss just going to have just from a volume standpoint? That's my question. I think he's going to have those opportunities because I think defenses are going to be, really trying to protect against those stud wide receivers that they have. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a volume thing. How much is Zach Taylor going to actually hand the ball off to Zach Moss?
We back?
I think you dropped off there for a little bit.
All right.
You're spinning your noggin over there.
Spinning my wheels. Yeah, no, apologies. It is a rainy day here, so connection is clearly a thing. But I think that's a great point you brought up there about, hey, are they going to be too pass happy? I think if you want to be successful, you got to mix in the run game. But that's a very solid point. Anybody else on this team that you're thinking, you may take a shot on this roster here?
Yeah, the one that I think is a nice addition for the Bengals is Gesicki. Like, obviously, while he was in New England, like, it was kind of wishy-washy production up there. He didn't really stand out while he was in New England. But when he was down in Miami, like, this dude was a stud, right? And I think the transition to Cincinnati with a Joe Burrow, we still don't know what their third option is going to be as far as a receiving threat. Is it going to be Gesicki? Is it going to be Jermaine Burton coming out of Alabama? So it'll be interesting, but I think he could be that dude.
I agree with you, right? So Gesicki, tight end 27 right now. Jermaine Burton, wide receiver 76. I think, who is going to be that third receiving option. Gesicki did when he was in Miami. The New England was a hot mess last year, so nobody really looked good with them. But when he was in Miami, he showed he was capable, and they like to use the tight end. I mean, Tanner Hudson was serviceable there for them, and Jermaine Burton, taking over for Tyler Boyd. I think both those guys are worth a shot. Really, is kind of you want to figure out which one you think is really going to be that third option, but they're both at a very, very low price right now. All right, let's head over to our best bets to this actionable news. So we're talking about the 9-8 last year Bengals. They head into the season with a 10.5 win total, juiced to the over at -140, under at +120. Where are you going? What is your first best bet for this team?
Let's see here. So for the Cincinnati Bengals, I really think that they're going to have a really good year for a variety of different reasons. I think with Joe Burrow, obviously they get an automatic upgrade in the quarterback room, but also there's some wide receiver things going on here. Like it's the last year most likely with T. Higgins.
Yep.
Chase wants to get paid more than Justin Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
So all of those dudes are kind of out to prove themselves. They want that bag, if you will. So I really think the Cincinnati Bengals offense is really going to take a step forward. And so I am first going to say I like Joe Burrow as the comeback player of the year at +300.
Is he the favorite?
He's not the favorite. He's second to A.A. Rod.
Oh, Rodgers. Okay.
So I think Joe Burrow is just going to put up a shit ton of numbers, to be honest with you, with the two wide receivers, with Burton, with Gesicki. They, like I was saying earlier, are kind of a pass-happy offense when he's there. So I could see him putting up a shit ton of numbers. And that leads me into my second bet. And I think he's going to have more than 30 passing touchdowns. And that was listed at +125. So like I said, I just really like their offense this year. And this is kind of an odd one, but Jamar Chase, they have that. They have it listed for Jamar Chase to have one 200+ receiving yard day at +370. I mean, Jamar Chase is so explosive. Like he's one of those dude that he could go off at any time for 12 for 250. And so I think he'll at least have one of those games.
Yeah. Right. No, I mean, there's very few receivers that can realistically get to 200 yards. And I think Jamar Chase is squarely in that select group of individuals who can do that. You talked about they love to throw the ball, right? I mean, if you beat up either whether you get in a shootout or whether you're beating up on a bad team, that's really, for deep balls to Chase or 3 or 4, where he's shown the ability to take it the whole way and Burrow put a good ball on him. But wow, folks, that is a lot of optimism coming from a Steelers fan. So, take that.
Yeah,
I would not take that lightly. I am a little surprised. For me, I think the team stuff, I think like a lot of teams in this division, a little tougher to read. I think there is a team that is right around that 10-11 win, kind of see both of those very, very easily. So I stayed away from the win total as well. I went to player props, and I went a little bit of a different direction. I also think this offense is going to be pretty good, but I talked about Zach Moss before. I'm talking about him again. Give me my first best bet for the Cincinnati Bengals for the 2024 season. Running back Zach Moss over 775.5 rush yards at +100 there. I mean, I think this is all about a guy getting opportunity, and I think he comes in as RB1. He put up 445 yards, more than half of this number in just 4 games as RB1 for the Indianapolis Colts, right? Obviously, when Jonathan Taylor came back, then, he had to start split scaries, whatever. I expect Zach Moss to be the guy for the majority of the season. I think he easily smashes this number of 775. So give me Zach Moss there at a little bit of plus money at +100. Also, my other guy I'm going to be targeting is T. Higgins. I think that, I'm just going with his over 875.5 at -110. He's hit this over in 3 out of his 4 years with the Bengals, really barring injury. I really don't see how this is not happening. Kind of to Derek's points, Burrow back. I think that offense, I think both on the ground and through the air, they're going to be able to click. It's just going to be, hey, is the defense ready to kind of be stout enough to start turning this production into some wins? But yeah, I like T. Higgins there. T. Higgins on almost any other team in the league would be a wide receiver one. I just don't think enough people realize that. And, for him to get over 875.5 yards, I'm also looking at him over 1,000 yards. Like, that is very much in the realm of possibilities for the season, especially if we can get a healthy Joe Burrow.
Yep. I'm definitely co-signing your Zach Moss over 775, even though I did bring up a couple different points, kind of, debating that, playing devil's advocate. But
yeah,
like you were saying, I mean, the dude is serviceable. Like the guy had a good run in Indianapolis when he was that RB1. So
yeah. Well, I just looked over Dolphins linebacker Shaq Barrett announces that he's retiring from the NFL. I took them to miss the playoffs. And
look at you being a reporter.
I know, breaking news for Ian Rappaport there. Took them to miss the playoffs, and Chop Robinson 50 or 500-1 most sacks in the league. Just saying, he's gonna be the only healthy guy out there. But all right, we are not talking about the AFC East. We are now moving over. Before we talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, let's talk about the Sports Gambling Podcast and how we're getting you ready for the college football with our conference previews. That's right. The guys over at the mothership there, Sports Gambling Podcast, the flagship program, they're breaking down all the college conferences that look a hell of a lot different than we last saw them last year. I mean, the Big Ten has, 16 or 18 teams.
Yep.
None of the numbers match. So whatever you think Big 12 the Pac 2 now, the Big 16, it's all messed up. So you need to go over there and check that out. It's a great way to start getting you in the mindset of college and then get you into your own research and things like that. They're on there with Colby, who is a college football guru. So I highly encourage you to check them out. I checked them out myself. All right. To probably the Derek's favorite part of the program. We are now going to talk about the 2024 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Here we go.
10-7 last year. A lot of losses, but a lot of additions. So let's start rattling them off here. They lost their QB carousel, the entire carousel from last year in Pickett, Rudolph, and Trubisky. Deontay Johnson, gone in Carolina. Allen Robinson, gone in New York. Mason Cole out of there. Patrick Peterson is no longer – he's still a free agent?
He's still a free agent. Yeah, I'm hoping they make a move and bring him back, to be honest with you.
He might. Yeah, I would not be surprised if he comes back. And then Levi Wallace. The additions, the quarterbacks, the big ones, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Are they QB 1A, 1B? Are we 1-2? Russell Wilson's likely going to start. We'll see. Wide receiver Van Jefferson, potentially wide receiver 2. We'll see. Cordell Patterson. Hey, man, new kickoffs. Great time to have a kick returner back there. Patrick Queen is, I think, the biggest addition to this team coming over from what do you call them over there in Baltimore?
The Baltimore Ratbirds.
The Ratbirds coming over from the Ratbirds there. Dante Jackson coming over from Carolina. Cam Sutton, Deshaun Elliott, picked up the left tackle from Washington, Faltano.
Troy Faltano.
And then the center from West Virginia.
Stud.
Yeah, but fuck West Virginia. And then Robin Wilson and Peyton Wilson. So definitely not related, but two guys that can absolutely produce. I mean, even just looking at their rookies, those are 4 players that may all be at significant playing time this year.
No, I would not be surprised if at least 3 of those dudes are at the top of the depth chart come week 1, to be honest with you. If not, potentially all 4 of them.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you might be looking at 4 day 1 starters out of a draft. We all know the Steelers draft well, but this has the chance to be, a really, really important draft class for a Steelers team that, they're always there, but they just haven't kind of taken that next step yet in a few years. Yep. So initial takeaways from your lures there.
How much time we got? No. As far as the quarterbacks go, obviously they had to do something because all 3 of the dudes that were on the roster last year were like the same dude. Like Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Trubisky were like they were all the same. Like they all
Trubisky
had like
was
their
so
2 plays and then they sucked ass. Like they were, I mean, anyways. Deontay Johnson, good riddance. I don't know what is his deal as far as not knowing his boss moving down to Carolina. But I was never a huge Deontay Johnson fan. I mean, has probably been their wide receiver 1 over the last 2 or 3 years, but he's been questionable at times.
Yeah.
Mason Cole, I like our new additions on the offensive line. I think they've added a lot to a roster that needed some reinsurgence of something. I don't know necessarily what that is because they've had a decent roster.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like they've still had holes, and they still do have a couple holes that I'm interested to see if they are able to bring in another dude or two. Because I think they have budgeted to a certain extent where they could still bring in a veteran wide receiver, or they could still bring in another cornerback, something like that. But from an addition standpoint, like they have me excited.
Yeah.
But within this division, like they could go anywhere from like 13-4 to 5-12.
It's Tomlin, man. You can't go 5-12. Get the hell out of here.
I know.
But I listen. I think that first of all, Mitch Trubisky is one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever had the displeasure of watching. Last season, losing to the fucking Patriots on Thursday night or whatever that was. I mean, that was awful. He was awful. So he was bad. But let's be honest, Rudolph and Pickett weren't very good. And then Deontay Johnson, his fandom might have just slipped through his hands, right? I mean, the guy, it seems like he caught all these balls, but just in crucial times, he would the drops that he would have are insane.
Yeah.
Like, how are you so good, but so bad at the same time? So super frustrating. But no, I think, you have reason to be a little bit cautiously optimistic with these additions, but it's a tough read. So let's get into some of these injuries. Cole Holcomb, linebacker, man, that middle linebacker spot was cursed last year for the Steelers.
I mean, it has been since Shazier went down, to be honest with you. But anyways, go ahead.
Good point. But yeah, they just took an absolute beating, and he was kind of the first domino to fall of a guy who looked like he was having a hell of a good year. He stayed the night in the hospital. There was rumors about ACL surgery, rumors about retirement. I don't know if there's ever been it's been clear cut about what is going on. But we're going to operate. Are you tracking something different? Or because everything I could see is like, we think he needed an ACL surgery, but I don't really know.
Well, as far as the injury itself goes, like, I guess I don't know. Like you said, there hasn't been a whole lot of like definite, this was the injury with Cole Holcomb, or as far as his timeline, I guess, goes.
Yeah.
But a couple things that I have been tracking over the last couple of days, they just signed Tyler Matakevich, who was up in Buffalo.
Yep.
And he actually started his career in Pittsburgh. So why are you signing this veteran linebacker if you already have a Peyton Wilson, a Patrick Queen, and a Cole Holcomb coming in, right? So that's probably where I'm most concerned with Cole Holcomb. Like, you most likely aren't bringing in this fourth veteran linebacker 2 days or 3 days before training camp starts, if you don't have concerns from a team standpoint. So whether, like you said, there's been some reports where he's considered retiring. He's just not ready for the seat. Like, will we see Cole Holcomb at all? It's hard to say, you know, but at the end of the day, like, I don't think he's going to be ready for the first quarter, maybe first half of the season, at least, just based on their moves over the last couple of days.
Yeah, I know. And so he had the injury. He's about 10 months from his injury date to week 1. So if we operate on some sort of an ACL, obviously it's a significant injury, right? He's having to spend the night in the hospital, considering retirement, right? On that 10 to 12 month timeline, I would be right there with you with my concerns about, is he going to be ready for the first, 4 games or something like that. So, and I think that's a great nugget with them bringing in Medikevich there just recently, like you said. Cam Hayward, another guy who was beat the hell up last year. First week, he suffered a groin strain to the point where, it was the left side compensating for the right side being injured. So like he had a little bit of a groin strain, and the other side, he also had a knee scope. So the cool thing about some of these guys having their podcasts and stuff like that is, Cam Hayward, fellow podcaster, cheers, right? Brother. Also just a fucking phenomenal dude. I remember he donated to one of our things over there when we were at school there at University of Pittsburgh. Just a great guy. But anyway, he was a little beat up, had the groin surgery, had a knee scope, looking probably around 4 to 6 months expected recovery timeline. He's got about 7 months from he had off-season surgery in February. He's got about 7 months to recover. What are your thoughts about Hayward getting up there?
I hope he's back and ready to roll, because like as much as like obviously TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick and some other of the other dudes on this defense we're still there, like he is the front of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like he is their run defense, right? I mean, he's been there for, I don't know, 12 years at this point, something like that.
Yeah.
And like he's just that veteran that will still get in your face and like, set the defense where it needs to be. Right. Yeah. So I'm really hoping Cam Hayward, and I expect him to be back full strength, just timeline wise. Everything's should be right where it needs to be. But yeah, I think it was just, like you said, it was just kind of a one thing led to another basically all season last year.
Yeah, it's tough when guys pick something up early, man. It's tough. You see the compensation, you see them just trying to battle through it. I mean, it really shows what warriors these guys are. But a lot of these guys at the end of the year, everyone says, everyone's hurt, everyone's beat up. Who's actually injured, who can't play, right? So it just kind of goes to show you what a battle an NFL season is. We'll talk briefly about another guy in Peyton Wilson who we've talked about, but he had some injury concerns in college, a couple ACL tears, a couple shoulder surgeries. Back injury, yada, yada, yada. Great player, productive player, but that injury history kind of, led him to fall in the draft. We've both talked about, we think this was a really good pickup. A guy that, with those concerns with Cole Holcomb could be a day one starter. What is your kind of outlook? What are your thoughts about Peyton Wilson?
I mean, I absolutely love that he is he's a Pittsburgh Steeler, because the dude at NC State was an absolute beast. Like he flies all over the field making plays. I mean, he is kind of that coverage linebacker that the Steelers have needed over the last 4 or 5 years, really, again, since Ryan Shazier went down. So I'm really hoping that he can make a huge impact on this defense. But he's not the first, there were some reports out there that maybe he only has one ACL, but then he himself says he has both of his ACLs. Like whatever the case is, like whether he has one or not, there have been some pretty decent Steelers, or at least decent Steeler that only had one ACL in Hines Ward. And the
dude's out for Hines Ward. Yeah,
he's pretty good. So, I think, especially with Cole Holcomb's situation, like he's here's your chance to be a week 1 starter in the NFL.
Right away. Yeah. And to a good defense and a good running mate in Patrick Queen there.
100%.
So I think if the Steelers can shore up that middle of the field there in that linebacker core, I think that they'll go a long way, because, you got Hayward and Watt up at the front. You got Ojeanobi.
Highsmith.
Highsmith, exactly. And then on the back end, you got Joey Porter. You got Minkah, so it's really about, for me, it's that middle of defense. Can they shore that up? And I think Patrick Queen's going to go a long way, and I think Peyton Wilson will as well. All right, let's head on over to the fantasy land. Really what I want to talk about, the biggest thing is, we got 2 questions. One, what are we doing at the running back position? And then who's wide receiver 2? So why don't we start with the running backs? Najee at RB20. Warren at RB26. What are your thoughts on the situation?
I mean, yes, it's tricky, but at the same time, I don't know if it necessarily is. Najee still got the lion's share of the carries last year.
Yeah.
Arthur Smith coming in is a run-heavy offensive coordinator. He was when he was in Tennessee. He was, the Falcons have been pretty run-heavy over the last couple of years, whether that's because of their quarterback situation or not. Who knows?
Ineptitude, yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think both of these dudes will have their opportunities. Like Najee's more like a Derrick Henry, going back to Artie Smith's Tennessee days, where he's going to grind and get your 4, 5, 6 yards at a time. Where Jaylen Warren, out of the backfield as a receiving threat is it definitely a weapon. He's got a little bit more spark, a little bit more juice, a little more explosiveness probably at this point in his career. But I think at their spots, I would probably lean Najee just because he's going to get the volume.
I would agree there. But as we will hint a little bit further, I am definitely not against either of these guys. Really, we're looking at, you got George Pickens at wide receiver 27. He's going to be their wide receiver 1. That's pretty set in stone. Yep. Who's the wide receiver 2, right? You got Roman Wilson coming out of Michigan at wide receiver 78. You got Van Jefferson, who they traded for, at wide receiver 122. And then Calvin Austin, who they drafted, was it a year ago or 2 years ago, at wide receiver 93. So you got 3 guys all going pretty late. We understand. I think we're kind of under the same realm of, hey, they might run the ball a lot, but a wide receiver 2 that you can get basically for free. If you had to take a stab on one of these guys, who is it for you?
I would almost lean Van Jefferson, to be honest with you. I mean, he's probably the one guy that has shown glimpses of a step higher production in the NFL. Not to say that he's, been a wide receiver 1 or 2 in the NFL, but like Roman Wilson's that more slot kind of gadgety guy, coming out of Michigan. So, I just don't know. They really haven't had that slot receiver in a while in Pittsburgh, and I just haven't seen them use that position a ton. Van Jefferson's more your prototypical outside receiver, and I just think of those 3, he's probably going to get a slight more volume, to be honest with you. But it's hard. I don't know if I would necessarily take any of them.
Yeah, it is definitely a tricky situation. I think the thought of a 2 wide receiver set with 2 tight ends and a running back is probably a very, very dominant formation for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. All right, let's go on and head to the action. Let's get into the sports books. Let's get some of these bets down. I'm going to kick us off with my best bets for the 2024 Pittsburgh Steelers. We're heading to the running backs. We're heading to that backfield right away. I am taking Najee Harris, 1,000+ yards rushing at +210. Do not think this is a fade of Jaylen Warren, because I'm also taking Jaylen Warren over 625.5 rush yards at +100. Look, folks, Derek just talked about it, but Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator. Okay. Not only does Arthur Smith love to run the ball, but as all the Bijan, truthers were telling you last year, he loves to spread the love to both RB1 and RB2. Look, even without Arthur Smith, they did this last year. Najee just went over 1,000 yards, and Jaylen Warren had about 700-something yards there. So they did this last year. They upgraded the offensive line. Both years they've taken their first pick has been an offensive tackle, which I think was very much needed. And now you have Arthur Smith, and you have 2 guys who are ready to kind of run down people's throats there. So, I love both of these running backs at this point, at least in the betting market.
Hey, I'm going to co-sign both of those. Again, looking at Arthur Smith's stats last year down in Atlanta, Bijan Robinson hit that number, and Tyler Algier, I think, was like 3 yards from hitting the number that Jaylen Warren would have to hit. So,
yeah,
they're right there.
I think Warren is a more dynamic guy than Algier. Yeah. I do like Algier. I think he's a hard runner, but I think in a yards perspective, I think Warren's going to get you a couple more just because of his burst. And then the last thing for me, I'm going to take for the Steelers is over 8.5 wins at plus 135. What are we doing, folks? I mean, how many times has Mike Tomlin not had a winning season? It's zero. I mean, it's never happened, right? Like, what are we doing to go 9-8? I mean, just think about this. The Pittsburgh Steelers with Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitch Trubisky won 10 games last year. 10 games. They've upgraded their offensive line. They brought in some linebackers on defense. And I think, there's questions about Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, but I think you got to be pretty dense to think that it's not an upgrade over the trio of, ineptitude that we saw last year. So give me the Steelers over 8.5 wins at plus 135. What are did you only have the running backs? Did you have anything else for the Lurs there?
Yep. Well, before I get to my best bets, I do have one thing. You know what grinds my gears?
What grinds your gears?
NFL schedule makers.
Oh, here we go. We go.
Can we look? The only thing that they helped the Steelers out was placing their bye week right in the smack dab middle of the season at week 9.
That's a good thing.
After the bye week, they go to Washington. Okay, fine. That's cool. And then their last 8 games, Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Cleveland. 1, 2, 3, 4 division games right in a row. Then you go to Philly, your in-state rival. Also a division champion last year. Then you go to Baltimore. And then you have Kansas City on Christmas Day. And then you finish the season with Cincinnati. You have all 6 of your division games within 8 weeks to end the season. And your only other 2 games are at Philly and Kansas City, the Super Bowl champions. Like, who the fuck puts that schedule together?
So I need to hit this over by Washington, or we're screwed. There.
Yeah, I mean, they
9-0 start.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but if they're gonna do anything, if they're gonna have the season like they should, that a lot of Steelers fans are expecting, they better be, I don't know, 6-2 going into that bye week, because the back half of that schedule is loaded. But anyways,
that is brutal. But all right,
going into my best bets, I just said they had all 6 of their division games within the last 8 weeks of the season. I still like them to win at least 2.5 of those. Yeah. Like, what are we talking about to a certain extent? Like, why is this number at 2.5? They were 5-1 last year.
Half of their wins were in the division. In a good division, we're in the division. They play them tough.
Exactly. So, I mean, the Steelers historically play division rivals very, very well. I mean, and which leads me into my second best bet, and it's kind of a 2-parter, a little bit of a mini ladder here, is the Steelers to at least split with the Ravens and go 1-1, and that's listed at plus 115. But I also like them to sweep the Ravens at plus 400. Since 2020, the Ravens have beat the Steelers 1 time. They've played 8 games. They're 7-1 over the last 4 years against the Ravens. So, I mean, they have Lamar Jackson's number.
They really do.
For whatever reason, know how to get to him. And they held the Ravens to their lowest scoring output twice last year. They held them to 10 points, which was their lowest scoring output. So I like him against the Ravens. I like him against the division. But then I would co-sign your running back picks. Yeah,
I might have to add those to the portfolio there, because I've seen it. I've seen it a couple times actually. But yeah, even when they were in Baltimore, not last year but the year before, when Kenny Pickett took them on that comeback drive, they just have Baltimore's number right now. And as good as Baltimore as a team is, and we're going to talk about them now, I do like that. I'm going to have to add that to the portfolio. All right, folks, we are at the halfway point in the show, which means we get to talk to you about some of our awesome sponsors there. And first thing we're going to talk about is Underdog Fantasy. these are guys that we play a lot of underdog fantasy. You're going to see, some shows with some underdog fantasy stuff coming up soon. And they just launched their college football best ball product. First place wins $20,000. So not quite as much as the Best Ball Mania 5 there with the over $1 million prize. But hey, they're the only ones right now that I know that have done college best ball. It's a huge thing there. They're going to have college NFL pick'ems, and you have their pick 8 that allows for up to 325x. So look, we love them over at Underdogs. So sign up with promo code SGPNDoc to claim the special pick. First time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPNDoc. This is an example of some of the specials. They have a lot of specials. Poetan here back when that nice, probably the best UFC we've seen in a while in 303. And then we're going to talk about here. Why don't you tell us about Jerry Jeudy and his projections for the season?
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Jeudy coming over from Denver. He barely passed over this number last year, and the Browns are just a much more run-heavy offense. There's a lot more options in Cleveland for Deshaun Watson to spread the ball around a little bit more. So we're going to take Jerry Jeudy's lower than 725.5 receiving yards on the season. Mostly just because, like I said, the Browns are a run-heavy offense. We'll talk about Nick Chubb here in just a minute and hopefully his return. But yeah.
Yeah. No, and look, I mean, Judy's had his trouble staying healthy. He's had his trouble being actually a productive receiver. I mean, definitely a guy that had all the potential in the world coming out of Alabama, but has just not put it together. He's on his second stint. We'll talk about the Browns in a second. I'm not super high on Deshaun Watson. I just think, if he has 700 yards, I think that's still a good year for him. But for him to go over that number is just not something we're seeing there. All right. Before we get on to those Cleveland Browns, let's tell you about Circa Survivor and Millions. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Of course, Circa contests have zero rake. Circa Millions, where you pick 5 teams against the spread each week, compete for $6 million, and then survive the gauntlet with their Survivor. 1 team a week. Obviously can't use them. They do have a Christmas and Thanksgiving game, so a little tougher than most Survivors, but the grand prize is a lot better and $10 million. So sign up in person between now and September 7th. You can also use a proxy. Say you don't live in Vegas like most of us don't. You want to go out there, you sign up. Then you go ahead and head over to footballcontestproxy.com. Use promo code SGP. You save $50 and you get your bets in. Hey, it's a small price to pay for the shot at $10 million. Let's be honest there. So if you don't have a trip yet booked for Vegas, encourage you to come out for Ultimate Contest Weekend, August 22nd to the 24th. Our bosses, Sean and Ryan, will be out there. They got open bar. They will reward you for signing up. You're going to, part of the tailgating ramp up protocol, it's time you start adding the social aspect. Can I drink and talk? We got to relearn these things, just like after surgery.
Maybe play a game on the side.
Yeah, a little beer pong, a little beer die. Just get yourself warmed up. Get those ligaments moving, baby.
That's right.
But head on to Circa. I know I will be heading out there for week 1. The show usually goes down there. If somebody wasn't getting married, we'd be making it a host vacation, but it happens. So we love Circa. We've both been a few times. So head on over there and show them some love. Tell them we sent you. All right. We're talking about the Brownies, Cleveland Browns, 11-6 last year, despite no Watson and Mr. Joe Flacco coming off the couch. He's the first loss, which
Did we lose you again?
Are we back?
Oh, there he is. Come on now.
Hey, just like Flacco, baby, I'm returning. You can't keep me out of the league. I'm coming back. But no, so their first loss is Joe Flacco. Kareem Hunt, who cashed me a sweet 11-1 to have 2 touchdowns against the Houston Texans. I can see it as clear as yesterday in the playoffs. Anyway, let me stop reminiscing. I hope he gets picked up. I love betting Kareem Hunt anytime touchdowns. Anthony Walker and Sione Takitaki, both linebackers at the same position, both guys with health concerns that just didn't really work out, but are good players. Additions, famous Jameis, baby. eating that W, baby. The Florida State Seaman Hole himself, Jameis Winston. Deontay Foreman, Jerry Jeudy, we talked about. Devin Bush, former Steeler. Jordan Hicks coming over from, I believe, Minnesota. And then Mike Hall, your guy out of
Ohio State University.
Yeah. All right, what are your takeaways from your division rival there? What did they do in the offseason? Anything major? What are you thinking?
For the most part, they swapped out a running back. They swapped out both linebackers, and they're running it back. Cleveland was just decimated with injuries, like all over the field. Their offensive line, obviously, Nick Chubb goes down in week 3 or 4, or something like that. Yep. I think they had a quarterback carousel of their own up in Cleveland.
Yep.
So I mean, obviously, their defense solid. They may have had the best defense, at least top 3 defense in the entire NFL last year, but offensively, will they be able to stay healthy? What kind of production is Deshaun Watson going to be able to give you? Because he took a year and a half, 2 years off not too long ago, missed most of the season last year. The dude just hasn't played football in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Like, it's been a while since Deshaun has played a full season, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's where my biggest concern is, outside of obviously Nick Chubb returning from that major knee injury that he had.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're going to talk about it a little later. Trust me, because I'm going to bring it up about Deshaun and both Chubb. But yeah, we're gonna head over to the injury realm here in 1 second. But I think some of their takeaways is Jerry Jeudy, I guess, is really the biggest addition because he's the biggest new piece, right?
Yeah,
he's the biggest guy who is coming in that wasn't in there last year. The one that kind of separates them a little bit. But I like how you said they really are kind of running it back here. All right, let's talk about some of the injuries there. And why don't we start with Nick Chubb? We have the picture up here where he is squatting an insane amount of weight. So let's talk about his injury first. He had that multi-ligament knee injury where he had his ACL blown out, a couple other ligaments there. What was it? MCL and meniscus. Yep. And, he required 2 surgeries, one to fix the MCL meniscus and then one to fix your ACL, or the other one to fix the ACL. This was a major injury, something that typically takes closer to like a year to almost 15 months. But this is what he's doing at 8 months out. So what are your thoughts on Nick Chubb?
My question is, why are we using that tsunami bar and throwing 600 pounds on this dude's back that just had a major knee surgery, 8 months ago?
Yeah.
Right?
About 8.5 months ago. Yeah.
It's impressive. I think there was a video of him doing exactly the same thing about a year and a half ago with, I think, 60, 75 pounds more. But, for all intents and purposes, the only thing that this shows me is that, the dude wants to show that he's still strong.
Mm-hmm.
He has strong glutes and hamstrings. Cool. I'm hoping Nick Chubb the best on all weeks except for when the Browns play the Steelers. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Nick Chubb's injury is just weird, and from a timeline standpoint, you're right there at week 1. I personally probably wouldn't expect him to be back that first week, at least at full strength, because he's not going to be. I wouldn't think he would be doing a whole heck of a lot in training camp, but it's just weird, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, hey, Nick, first of all, just because he can do something doesn't mean we really should be doing something. This also doesn't really change my opinion in any way of his outlook for the season. I mean, this is a lot more, we talked about, it's a lot more hamstring and hip dominant. If it's his knee, it's good that he has the range. It's good that he can get down there. But I'd be much more impressed to see him doing some unilateral single leg stuff, so doing some explosive stuff, to cutting, to getting back, to taking contact. Like those are things I'm concerned about. I mean,
let's see him sprint. Let's see him run a 40.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Something that's a lot more functional, something that's, truly using those quads and allowing those knees to be explosive.
Yeah. And as Derek did allude to, he does have 12 months because he injured himself so early. So that is a plus. He does have a little bit more time than most to kind of get himself situated. But he's someone I'm still avoiding in fantasy. And we'll talk about their running back, their backfield in a second. I want to talk about a couple injuries here really quickly. Deshaun Watson, shoulder fracture. And, they saw that hairline fracture. They decided to end his season with that, let that heal. He's got about 9.5 months to the season. This is really something that at the worst case takes 6 months. I'm not really concerned with. He's back to throwing. If obviously you monitor it in training camp, if it's something that you see something come up potentially, but I think he's going to be good to go. The other guy's Jack Conklin. He also had a multi-ligament knee injury, in week 2, I believe, if not week 1. And he has 12 months recovery, but that is about 11 to 12 month recovery timeline. What are you thinking about Conklin? Obviously different position. Are you a little bit more optimistic there with his multi-ligament knee injury?
I don't know if I'm necessarily as much optimistic with him, but they have another guy in Dwan Jones that was fairly serviceable last year. Like in pass pro, Dwan Jones is a hell of an offensive tackle, but the dude's like 6'8", 360 and just can't get out and move as well as Jack Conklin can in the run game. So
yeah,
I think they have some other pieces there that can fill in nicely for Jack Conklin if he's not ready to go. But at the same time, like he's probably going to be in that range where he could be ready for week 1. I wouldn't necessarily leave that off the table, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's not full go until week 3, week 4, or something like that either.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good read there. And man, as a Giants fan, one of the teams I do envy is the Browns because their offensive defensive line play is just so dominant for so long. It's something that I'm a firm believer. You build your team from the inside out, as the Giants Super Bowls have shown. I don't know how they haven't shown the front office, but I digress. We're talking about the AFC North. All right, we're gonna go to Fantasyland first. Just a couple guys we want to talk about. Really just the running backs. Let's see what we're trying to do here. Nick Chubb, RB35, Jerome Ford, RB39, and Deonta Foreman, RB62. Obviously, these numbers are dynamic. We are in July. These numbers change a lot. But this is telling me Chubb is going right before Ford, and Foreman is going, about 30 picks later, basically free. Do you agree with these? What are your thoughts? What are you looking at here?
The biggest question for me is more Ford versus Foreman, like as that RB2. Like, I think both of them could be the guy. Like, Jerome Ford never really showed that burst as a running back through most of the season last year. Like, he was okay, but I think he finished the season with like 3 touchdowns, 800 and some yards. Like, again, he was okay, but he probably averaged about 4 yards a carry. Like, I think at this point in his career, Deonta Foreman probably has a little bit more juice, a little bit more burst. At the end of the day, I think I would probably stay away from all 3 of them.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will cannibalize each other a little bit. I don't know, man. Yeah. I do think Jerome Ford showed me some things last year. Good. I am optimistic for Ford. I know
you must have not been starting Jerome Ford on your fantasy team because he was so it was very frustrating. He would have like 70. He would have 72 yards and no touchdowns every single week.
That's a good point. And what is he doing out of the backfield? I know he was a decent threat out of the backfield, but I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think, like we talked about, the Browns took some hits to offense. They were trying to figure things out. I think Ford is going to start as the guy. I wouldn't mind Ford at RB basically 40. You're not spending a lot of draft capital. All these guys are kind of getting him a little bit later. But if you want to make the argument that you're going Nick Chubb, also RB35 pretty late because you're taking him purely for the back half of the season for him to have potentially have a pretty good back half. I can't make a huge argument with you there. I do think he's going to play. I do think by week 8-ish, he's going to kind of start getting back into it. It's really hard to bet on a guy who's had multiple knee surgeries, multi-ligament surgery. The only thing that keeps me from fully fading him is he does have almost a full year from his injury date to this year.
It's tough too. Cause obviously we've talked about how after an ACL tear, most guys don't field themselves until that 2-year mark, right?
Yep.
I don't know if he'll be like everybody because he's had knee injuries like this in the past, right?
Yeah.
So will some of that mental processing kind of, be sped up? I don't know. It'll be interesting. Maybe it'll be slowed down. Who knows? But like you were saying, I think if you get this guy in the back half of your draft, like he's gonna be on the field most likely come playoff time of your fantasy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where if you're tactical about it and he falls to you and you've got some pretty good running backs ahead of him and you have a plan to know this is not going to be like an every down, an every week starter for you. I think he's a guy that you can get ahead of the game on. So it's a pretty interesting situation there. All right, let's get over to the action. Let's go over to our best bets. We're going to start with you, my friend. What are your best bets for the 2024 Cleveland Browns? They went 11-6 last year. Win total is 8.5. Juice to the over at -135, under +115.
Yep. So the only thing that I'm going to throw out for the Browns, because all of these teams are really kind of everything's up for grabs in the AFC.
It's a tough read, man. This division
It is. But I think the only thing that I'm going to throw out there is Amari Cooper to go over 1,000 yards at +110.
Love it.
I was thinking taking his over at 950 at -110, but for the extra 50 yards to get plus money, I'll take that.
Mm-hmm.
He's already hit this, I think,
2 for 2 in Cleveland.
I was going to say at least last year, if not both years in Cleveland.
Yeah, 2 years in Cleveland. Yep.
I still like him, but outside of him, there are a lot of question marks for me. Like we were talking about with Jerry Jeudy, him coming in, and there's so many different options. He's not a truly proven guy. Running backs are all over the place. Deshaun Watson, who knows what he's going to give you. So I'm just going to stick with Amari Cooper over 1,000.
I agree with you so much. I took it myself. Amari Cooper, 1,000 plus receiving yards at +110. Yeah, he's just a guy who does this. 2 for 2 in Cleveland. He's kind of shown that despite Deshaun, the last 2 seasons getting hurt and not being, only playing 6 games, he can play through that. He can be productive. Him and Joe Flacco, or whether it's the DTR coming out of the UCLA, DJ Walker from the old
Joe Flacco.
Yeah, he's kind of quarterback proof. So I love the Cooper bet. And to that effect, though, I am going to add just one play is Deshaun Watson under 3,300 and half passing yards at -120. When is the last time you think Deshaun Watson has gone over this number?
2018.
A little bit sooner. 2020. 2020. The year that got him this fat contract and made Cleveland pay him a bunch of guaranteed money.
Gotcha.
And he's played 12 games for them in 3 seasons, 2 seasons, whatever it has been.
Yeah.
It's a health thing. It's hey guys, newsflash, you don't get better at football by not playing football. Yep. Deshaun Watson has done a lot of not playing football the last 4 years of his career. So I'm fading Watson. I just don't love the thought that he's going to be healthy all 17 games. The thought that they're going to just light it up through the air. I think they're going to get back to what they do, ground and pound. And he's got Jameis Winston breathing down his neck. I mean, he's got LASIK.
Jameis.
He's got a clean sheet. No Publix in Cleveland.
That's true.
His eyes were on
They
the
do have the
prize.
West Side Market though, which is a
lot of
nice little
crab
spot
legs?
though. I don't know if I would have crab legs out of Lake Erie up in Cleveland, but
So he's fine. He's perfect. He can see clearly that he knows what the goal is. So
hey, locker room guy, keep him up in Cleveland.
Jameis is so fun, dude. Jameis Winston's got to be one of the funniest guys in the NFL, man. What a character. What a character. But yeah, give me the under Watson there. All right. Anything about the Brownies there before we move over to the division champs?
I don't think so. I do think they will take a little bit of a step back this year. I think the defense is another year older, didn't really change a whole lot. I think there were there were some reports out there that like the Cleveland had their fastball last year and they just never did much change up.
Yeah.
In terms of their defense. So we'll see if they can develop a change up. But I do think that they probably will take a slight step back because they are the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, well, that's true. But also, that's why I'm staying away from that win total because with their offensive line, with their defensive line, they do have a floor. And is it going to be 9 games? Is it going to be 8 games? I'm not sure. So, I do think a step back is definitely probable. But how far back? I don't think it's going to be, I could see them with anywhere between 8 and 10 wins. Again, like everybody in this fucking division. All right. Before we head on to our last team, let me tell you about Rhythm. That is right. One of our awesome
you do
sponsors.
not have. Oh.
Did you say something you don't have? I apologize. Maybe one day, brother. But the British Open is this week. And if you're not checking out the AI picks and props from Rhythm, you're missing out. Not just outright winners. They got picks for top 5, top 10, top 20. Use their AI caddy to get some great data insights. You can even customize your own golf betting model. Look, they got all the models, right? And we're not just talking about, what is it? Kate Upton and I'm trying to think of any models. Like, I don't know any like Giselle. Is that
the wife has you on lockdown? You don't know any models. Holy smokes!
The pop culture is not my thing. But look, they got real models that can make you some money over at Rhythm. A bunch of smart people over there. You hear a bunch of touts saying all these cappers like, I got a model, instead of showing you their win-loss record or their units, really what should be units, a plus loss, like, what's your profit or loss. They'll tell you about their model they got. Well, now you can have a model too with Rhythm. So claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right. Last team. Let's bang it out here. We were talking about the Baltimore Ratbirds, or Ravens, as most people say. So yeah, they were 13-4 last year. Pretty solid record there. The best record in the NFL, actually. A lot of losses. Let's go through them. A lot of losses. We'll see how much, not as much additions. We'll see how much that really changes things. So let's look here. Tyler Huntley, he's been a backup for a while. He's obviously played. Will Lamar get COVID again this year? Who knows? He might miss some time. Their whole running back room, they told him get the fuck out. All of those are out. Most of them are in LA with the Chargers. Odell Beckham Jr. went over to Miami, took his talents to South Beach. Morgus Moses is gone. I think he's on the Jets now. Yep. Kevin Zeitler is gone. He's on the Lions?
Lions, yep.
Jadeveon Clowney, gone. Patrick Queen's on the Lurs. And a couple cornerbacks in Darby and Rock Ya-Sin. Additions, some big names. Derrick Henry, the king of the end zone, has returned. He is now not really returned, but the king is in Baltimore, taking his talents to Baltimore. Kyle Van Noy, long productive journeyman, but a journeyman. And then cornerback Nate Wiggins and offensive tackle Roger Rosengarten from that very good Washington Huskies offensive line. So quick takeaways for these Ravens here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, like you said, they basically bounced all of their starting running backs, if you will. They brought Dalvin Cook in, got a couple carries here and there over the last couple of weeks, but J.K. Dobbins gave up on him out of the Ohio State University, and then Gus Edwards, who was a touchdown machine last year. Both of them are out in LA at this point. Obviously, you lose offensive tackle Morgan Moses. You bring in a fresh rookie out of University of Washington. I think they got in the second round. And then you do lose a couple fairly key pieces on defense in Clowney and Patrick Queen. I love that Patrick Queen is now in Pittsburgh and not in Baltimore, but you do bring in Kyle Van Noy to kind of fill Clowney's spot as a pass rusher. So I think the big thing with the Ravens obviously is the signing of Derrick Henry. And like, I don't know necessarily why, and I'll talk about this a little bit, I guess now, why everybody's like saying this might be like the best backfield in the history of the NFL with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson both being back there. Like, yes, they're both absolute game-changing studs, but do their games like mesh?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, Lamar is a prototypical shotgun quarterback.
Exactly.
He wants space. He wants the ball in his hand without people around him so that he can make those reads and do what he does best in terms of running the football. Derrick Henry wants to be moving straight towards the offensive line and pull over people, right?
Yep.
And you're not going to be able to do that out of the shotgun. Maybe put him in the pistol, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know if he's going to be that dude in Baltimore. Like, yes, he's going to be the guy up around the goal line now that Lamar, I guess, kind of has been. But outside of that, like, I don't know if I'm super high on that signing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful point, man. Schematically, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Derrick Henry at his best is a north and south runner. To go out of the shotgun and have everything start east and west and not have that run up, I mean, how do you stop a monster in the backfield? You get him going east and west, right? You don't let him pick up that momentum. Now, the only thing I'll say, because we saw it in the past couple of years in Tennessee, is that the Tennessee Titans offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. The Baltimore Ravens offensive line is one of the best in the NFL.
They have been, but you bring in a fresh rookie right tackle, right?
That's true.
I don't know if that's necessarily the same offensive line. Obviously, still probably has some talent around it, but
that's a really good point.
There he is. Maybe.
We back 3 for 3.
There he is. Yes. Hello, Seb.
I'm here. Holy shit! All right, why not one more time?
We need some editing.
We made it through 7 out of 8 division previews. Pretty fucking smooth. And of course, here we go as we get to the last team. The 32nd out of 32 teams that we've talked to and breaking down, and the ship is, you know what it is? It's corporate gambling. They're sending in, we heard about Microsoft being down. They're trying to take out the big guns. You take down the airlines, you take down the railroads, you take down the Degen Docs.
You take down everything, basically.
We're not dumbing. Hey, we're not laying down. We're fighting through it. All right, folks. Let's talk about these injuries here real quick, and then let's get over to the fantasy in action and get the hell out of here. All right. Keaton Mitchell, young running back, ACL tear, only 8.5 months of recovery there. That tells me I probably want nothing to do with a guy who's likely going to be a change of pace guy. Any difference there? Someone you take a stab on or staying away?
Nope, I'm staying away from that one.
Yep. David Ajabo, a guy out of Michigan who's just not been able to get going. He was coming off an Achilles tear last year, and boom, right in the start of the season, ACL tear. It's just brutal. I hate it when guys' careers start off this way. So 11.5 months of recovery for a 10 to 12 month recovery timeline expected. So, a guy that it's hard to be optimistic on. Hopefully later half of the season he can get going. What are your thoughts there?
Completely agree. I mean, it's basically J.K. Dobbins in reverse.
Yep, exactly.
It's just tough.
That sucks. Yeah. And then Mark Andrews, he was almost coming back if they were in the Super Bowl. I think he does play, and I think he did play that last game, but obviously not himself.
He suited up.
Coming off a high ankle and fibula fracture, that's a 3 to 4 month injury, 2 to 3, whatever. He's got 9.5 months. He should be perfectly fine. And then Kyle Hamilton picked up. He had an elbow surgery only a month ago, really, in June 11th. But they had a loose body in there. They took it out. Only 2 to 3 weeks. He's got 4 months to the season. I would expect him to be back, if not for training camp, pretty shortly after. So a couple guys in Mitchell and Ajabo who it's hard to be optimistic. And then Andrews and Hamilton, the complete opposite, where they should be ready to roll for training camp and for week 1.
Yep.
Let's head over to fantasy. We're going to talk about a couple guys, and that's Mark Andrews at tight end number 4 and Derrick Henry at RB10. Is that where you think these guys should be going? Is that too high, too low? What do you think?
I think Mark Andrews is in for a big year, to be honest with you. I think, he started off very productive last year and then had the fractured fibula.
Yep, high ankle and fibula.
That's right. So yeah, I think he is probably where he needs to be, if not a little bit low, to be honest with you, even at tight end 4. And then Derrick Henry is a tough one. Like I was saying, I'm not entirely sure about this situation, if it's going to be the most productive for Derrick Henry in terms of yards, but I think he's going to be that goal line presence. Like, I think he's going to get the lion's share of the carries there and eat up yards and touchdowns. So he's probably in the right atmosphere at that RB10, just because I think he's going to score 12, 15 touchdowns this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. We talked about it offline, but the yards, it might be tough, but I think the touchdowns will get him there as well. All right. Is it me on the best bets?
Roll with it. Yep. Go for it.
Yeah. All right. My best bets for your 2024 Baltimore Ravens. I'm starting off with a defensive prop, because that is right, folks. We talk about real football. We talk about the defense on this show. And give me Justin Madubuike over 9.25 sacks at +120. He cleared this very easily last year at 13. Now, he was kind of a guy who, he was 2 and then 5, and then, he kind of popped, right? I just think this is a really good secondary. I think that quarterbacks are going to be forced to hold the ball against them. I think that, I'm really big on Kyle Hamilton. I'm really big on Brandon Stevens. I'm really big on Marlon Humphrey, if he can ever stay on the fucking field. But I like their defensive line as well. I just think Madubuike is one of those rare defensive tackles who has production from inside pressure. And, you're going to have, obviously, Venoy, Odafe Owe showed some good flashes off the edge. And I think those pockets are going to collapse. And I think Madubuike is going to pick up a lot of sacks this year. Another guy who Derek just talked about, Mark Andrews, man, I think he's their wide receiver 1. I think, with Zay Flowers coming in, I think people have kind of forgotten that. But if you look outside of Zay Flowers, I'm not really afraid of Rashad Bateman and Nelson Aguilar taking away targets from Mark Andrews. So give me his over 800.5 receiving yards at +100 there. Before his injury last year, he hit this in 2 consecutive years. I think he is Lamar's favorite target, and I think we're going to see Mark Andrews have a typical Mark Andrews year. I know a lot of people are writing him off, but that is not what I'm doing here. And then you might want to close your ears from this one, but the Baltimore Ravens win games. You were trying to tell me something about Goldilocks and Trevor Lawrence winning games. Lamar Jackson wins games in the regular season. So I will take the Baltimore, not against the Steelers, but I will take the Baltimore Ravens to be the number 1 seed in the AFC East. They were last year. I think this team did not lose a whole bunch. I'm optimistic with healthy Mark Andrews. We'll see about the Derrick Henry thing, but I think they just win games. I see another 12 or 13 win season. So give me the number 1 seed at +500 for Baltimore. What do you got on your side?
A few things. So I kind of went a different direction with Andrews. Like we both, I think, are agreeing here. I think he's in for a big year. I went with his over in terms of touchdowns. The number's only 6.5. He hit 6 touchdowns in 10 games last year. And then he had the ankle injury. So I don't see, unless there's another injury situation, how he doesn't get over 6.5 touchdowns. And that's being listed at plus 110 right now.
Okay.
I already talked about how I liked Derrick Henry's touchdown over rushing yards. So I think he's going to go under 1,000 yards for the first time in a while. So his number's at 975. I like the under at minus 110. But at the end of the day, I do think Baltimore gets in the end zone on the ground a lot, like a shit ton. So at 10-1, I like Baltimore to get at least 1 rushing touchdown every single game in the regular season. I think the only time they didn't do this last year.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what did they do last
year? I mean, their 4 losses last year were against Indy, where they scored 19 points in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, 2 against the Steelers, where they scored 10 points a game, and then at Cleveland, in Baltimore against Cleveland, where they scored 31. Yeah. So they're putting up points. The only times that they didn't score at least 20 points were against the Steelers twice and against Indy in overtime. I think those were mostly flukes in terms of the Indy game. The Steelers just kind of have their number, but those are always hard fought games. And at 10-1, I'll throw a little change on that.
You're gonna have to be rooting against your Steelers there for a little bit to cast the 10-1, maybe. Nope. Let them in once. Let them in once. That's it. That's right. There you go. So I do like that.
I have confidence in Justin Fields and Russ to put up more than 1 touchdown. So we're good.
More than 10 points. I hope so. It's gonna be a long year in the city of Pittsburgh. All right, folks, we did it. We have now broken down 32 NFL teams. We talked free agency breakdowns. We talked expert injury analysis. We talked fantasy football takes, and we talked best bets. So a couple things. One, let's go ahead and recap our best bets for this episode before we look too far forward. I'll let you start, brother. Give the folks your recap of your bets. You're going to run through them really quick.
Yep. So I got Joe Burrow as the comeback player of the year at plus 300. I like Burrow to go over 30 passing touchdowns at plus 125. Jamar Chase to have at least 1 game of over 200 receiving yards at plus 370. Zach Moss to go over 775. I kind of co-signed that with you. The Lurs to go over 2.5 division wins. 5-1 last year. Come on. The Steelers to win at least 1 game against the Ravens and split at plus 115, but I also like them to win both at plus 400. King Henry to go under 975, but I like him and Lamar to get in the end zone. So Baltimore to score at least 1 rushing touchdown every single game at 10-1. And then Mark Andrews receiving touchdown over at 6.5 touchdowns.
Love it. All right, I'm going to read off mine real quick. Let's rattle them off, starting with a little bit of a cosign there with Zach Moss over 775.5 rushing yards at plus 100. Yep. T. Higgins over his season total at 875.5 receiving, minus 110. Najee Harris, 1,000 plus at plus 210 rushing. And then Jaylen Warren over 625.5 rushing at plus 100. Your Pittsburgh Steelers to win at least 9 games at plus 135. Amari Cooper over 1,000 yards at plus 110. Deshaun Watson under 3,300 yards at minus 120. Justin Matabuke over 9.25 sacks at plus 120. Mark Andrews over 800.5 receiving yards at plus 100. And the Baltimore Ravens to have the number 1 seed in the AFC at plus 500. All right, folks, as we were getting into, this is the 32nd team of 32 that we just broke down. This is the last division preview. So where are we going from here? We are going to be up until the season. we are going to be releasing one episode a week. We are going to, we're going to do some best ball drafts. We're going to talk some fantasy. We might talk a little college, a little preview. We're going to break down some betting markets, some, whether it's rookie of the year, MVP, some different type of markets there. So stay tuned. Like you said, we're going to be doing about one episode a week until the season, the next 5-6 weeks there, until we actually talk about real football. And as we get closer to the season, we'll kind of break down what we're expecting our schedule to be throughout the season. So you got anything for the people before we get on out of here?
No, like you said, I mean, over the next few weeks until week 1, we got a few kind of special things planned. But at the end of the day, training camp, there will be 1 or 2 dudes go down, and we'll be right there with some injury analysis, some updates. There will be some changing of teams still to come as far as the offseason goes. So check back in, keep smashing that follow, share button, and we appreciate all the love.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As my co-host was alluding to, absolutely, we're going to be doing training camp updates. So make sure you do follow us on X, follow us on YouTube, the TikTok, the Instagram, all of those great, crazy things over there. Make sure you get all your news up to date, but we will be providing injury updates, training camp updates at the start of each episode as we go forward. So we look forward to that. Look, folks, as a new channel, as a new show, we want to shout out to people that have shown us love already. But hey, if you got some feedback for us, or if you just want to join us and join the squad and talk some football with us, we'd love to have you. Again, we're going to start going live soon. We're going to be going live during the season, so we want to help bring that fan base, because let's be honest, cashing bets is great, but cashing bets as a community, as a family, is even fucking better. So that's what we're trying to do here, folks. So you know what they say, a lock a day keeps the bookie away. From the Degen Docs, we are out of here. What's up, Degen's Doc here. As a proud member of the U.S. Army and a lover of football, sometimes those two things cross over on here. But as you probably already know, as a lowly captain, these are just my opinions. These are not opinions that are representative of the entire DoD or the U.S. Army. The same thing goes for any references to any commercial products or hyperlinks. Again, that does not constitute an endorsement from the DoD or the Army. I hope you enjoyed the show, and as always, let it ride, baby.